Welcome to our webinar, Making Software Work Better for Real Shipping Processes. Our guest speakers today are Dimitris Lyras, Director of Paralos Maritime Corporation, and Samuel Jones, Head of Application Management at TORM.
Alone, please.
If you have any questions about the topics today, please type them in the Q&A section and we'll get them answered for you at the end of the presentation. Here is our host, Carl Jeffrey from Digital Ship, to explain more.
Hello, so welcome to our webinar about how to make maritime software work better for real shipping processes. So we're doing this webinar because we often hear there's a gap between what shipping company people need to do and what today's software can provide. So some examples. So ship owners have to work out if it's profitable to accept a cargo being offered to them, but you've got voyage management software, which is sort of making predictions of certain costs, which is not quite the same thing. Or ship owners have to work out whether to make purchases and sales, and your financial software is just tracking the transactions that you've made and how much you've got left over. Or ship owners have got to make sure that equipment is running reliably, but you've got maintenance planning software, which is only telling you which maintenance tasks are due. Or ship owners have to work out if the ship is operated safely, but you've got safety software, which just tells you if forms have been completed. Then we hear there's a growing problem that ship owners get multiple software tools to try and do everything they want, and then they get into big problems with digital integration. And there's a lot of interest in AI, but experience so far shows it usually only adds value in one small part of the work process, such as sorting out your emails or making suggestions about some specific thing. So that's a long way from supporting a whole real-world process. And then we've got more integration challenges. So we're going to hear ideas today about a better way forward. So first we'll hear from Dimitris Lyras, who's Director of Paralos Maritime and also founder of maritime software company Ulysses Systems. And then we'll hear from Samuel Jones, who's Head of Application Management with TORM, which is one of the world's largest owners and operators of product tankers. So Dimitris is going to discuss an approach to software development, which starts with an understanding and modeling of actual business processes and goals. And then you model the software around that. And this approach should also mean that software tools are easier to integrate because they're built around the real world processes, not built around the technology. And then Sam is going to join us in the discussion. So at our Digital Ship Hamburg conference last December, Sam told us about how difficult the work of application management has become because the role should really be a fun role involving selecting and implementing software applications which can support the business and integrate each other well, but work turns out to be far more about the challenge of getting things working. And he also said that TORM has to develop some of its software tools in-house because the products it needs are not available in the market. So this is the first of a series of webinars we're planning about digital modeling for maritime. The next three have got a regional focus on Norway, which is the end of this week on Friday, and then on Greece and Germany. So I'd like to invite Dimitris to start his talk. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Carl. Sorry about I'm in a hotel room, which you probably noticed, and somebody might walk in with a vacuum cleaner, and so I'll have to get up and close the door. Yes, I think that what we've been finding over the years is that software is based on certain templates that have been around for a long time, and it's about time these templates changed. It's also that transactions are often considered to be the main focus of maritime software, getting things bought, getting things delivered, getting people reminded of maintenance, registering defects and so on. And all that is, as a transaction, is a good start. It's necessary. However, it's not just a transaction. A defect isn't just a transaction. It's a problem with your company. A defect on a machine is a problem with the enterprise because that machine does something in the enterprise and that machine affects operation of the ship in some way or another, sometimes not significant, sometimes very significant. So the aspect of what's the knock-on effect is very important. It's not a big shift to go from a transaction to what's the knock-on effect if it doesn't happen, or if it does happen, or if something bad happens, or something good happens. The real issue is that it's a risk aspect. So just like everybody does risk assessments right, left, and center on board for any dangerous process, the same kind of thing can be done on a piece of paper like this, and where you plot down or you write down what you think your risks are and what you think the processes that can go wrong are, and you link them up with arrows to the main risk. I'm not suggesting that this UI is the ideal, but it's flexible, and I think that it's what I'm trying to say is that it's not a great shift from what we're already doing. If we have a transaction, let's say for a non-conformance is one of the most classic, I would say, indicators of a shortfall in modeling of the maritime enterprise. Many of our processes are not registered in the computer somewhere. It doesn't. Most software don't tell you what navigation is, or what enclosed space entry is. They'll give you a procedure. Now they will give you a form to fill, but that form, filling that form, doesn't mean that you've succeeded in enclosed space entry. Doesn't mean that you've finished with your problem with a non-conformance. You may have a non-conformance, for example, in navigation. Navigation is a very, very intense process on a ship, and especially if you're going between in the North Sea with a chemical tanker from port to port, you certainly do have challenges in navigation. Now, if you get a non-conformance for navigation, let's say you don't abide by something, that doesn't tell you whether your company is doing any better or doing any worse. It doesn't tell you whether this can happen again. It doesn't tell you much. It just tells you it's actually a compliance step. It's telling you that you have a non-conformance, you're saying it, you're telling people, and then you're closing it. But that doesn't tell you if you're going to have another one. It doesn't even tell you if you've got an underlying cause there that could continue. You may write it in your report. You may say, yes, I have a root cause, and I think the root cause is preoccupation and also a very frequent port calls and other concurrent work that the deck officers and the navigation officer have to do. And this it sounds okay, but though your software doesn't know what you're writing in the form, it doesn't read the form. The form is for you to read. So as far as your system is concerned, it has no idea whether your status is better or worse for the safety of that ship. And the safety of that ship is what it's all about, really. So navigation is probably job number one. It's the one that can go wrong with the most calamitous consequences. So the idea that it's just a form that you send across, just a second, I need to handle this. I'm very sorry about this, Carl, and everybody. Voy a tomar this. Yeah. So the problem is that we're using templates. Software is full of templates. The actual structure of a software system is templates. Hold on. The structure of a software system is templates. You create an object, let's say a non-conformance object, and it has, among other things, the closing date. Now, what does the closing date have to do with navigation? If you've got a problem with navigation, is the closing of the non-conformance of any great consequence? No, it's a combination. What you have there is a template. That's an object that has a closing date, and you put it in your system, and the system has a UI, and it shows you the close, if you closed it, the closing date, or when it opened, or all kinds of bureaucratic steps there. And the point is here that it's not it's not talking about navigation. Your system should know that you do navigate with your ships, and that navigation has concerns, and concerns like preoccupation, concerns like the AIS, or the GPS position is not the only positioning you should be taking, because you could read it wrong, or you could be somehow interfered with, and you need to corroborate it with something else. If this isn't happening, it's a problem. Why it isn't happening is a problem. You need to think about this, and this needs to be discussed. I'm not saying that it's not discussed. I'm not saying that the shipping industry is not doing its proper job of navigation. I'm saying that the software isn't doing anybody any favors. It's just telling you that there's a non-conformance of navigation once you notice. So what I'm getting at here is that the concept of processes is way too underemphasized in general in information technology. We get we persist a part of a process that involves things you forget, which are important, like when did this thing open and when can we close it? But it doesn't tell you exactly what the consequences are going to be, what's the effect, what's the cause, what's it doing to your business. It's not this is just not just about every process in shipping that people do is not persisted in any software besides the procurement of signing people off and on the ship and so on, which are transactions. So the things that you really do, which could involve a lot of stress and a lot of risk to the company, are not persisted in any processes. If you take a quality management system and you go and analyze what it says non-conformance, 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 conformance, or KPIs and so on. What are those things? They are not running. It's not about running the ship. It's about looking like you're running the ship, which is fine. The compliance is important. I'm not saying that it isn't, but it's not the only thing. A defect, for example, a defect in a planned maintenance system, you mention a defect. A defect is written in text. The system doesn't have a clue what you're writing in there, doesn't know what that text means. So if you've got a main engine and you've got or 100 main engines on a large fleet and you've got them going back 10 years and you want to know what's going on with your defects and whether you're having them occur again and again, or whether you're doing your maintenance in time, you don't know that because the system only knows main engine or a component of the main engine, doesn't actually know the defect. The defect could be that you're getting a step in your piston ring lands and you're getting this repeatedly with a certain engine. So these things are important. So the resolution onto what the processes are in shipping is not great in software. And even the transactions aren't that complete. You know, we buy spares all the time, and we transport the spares, but there's no correlation between the transportation and the actual spares cost. Transportation could be a big part of the cost of the spares. It's a different build. It's difficult to segregate because other things go in the same consignment. It's not easy to tell that some part that weighed 2 kilos costs you this much to transport, so you could have bought it somewhere closer. So even the transactions aren't complete. So the two messages I want to put across. One is that the processes that we are involved with are not being persisted. We're taking an aspect of the process, like the compliance aspect, and saying you have a non-conformance. So let's register the non-conformance so we don't get into trouble. That's great, but there's other things going on. That process is doing something on your ship, and that process needs to be thought about, needs to be persisted. You need to know that something went wrong in the past. You don't want to be digging up the non-conformances and reading them in order to make even a trend report. Even KPIs don't work unless you know what the actual item is. What are you going to say? I had so many non-conformances. One is in navigation and we didn't plot the right waypoints, and the other one is the drain in the kitchen sink. So the KPIs need to be balanced according to their importance and what they affect. So in general, I think that what we're running up against is that software is built on the basis of buying a software product from some company, hopefully Silicon Valley, because they invented this model. And you buy the software, and then 5 years later you throw it. And in the meantime, you make amendments you make improvements, which customizations, which cost you an arm and a leg, and then it doesn't upgrade and so on. Something has to be done to make it more flexible. And something has to be done to understand that we have real processes and we need to think about them just the same way we think about risk management, that we do little diagrams like this and we persist them then in software somehow. But the important thing is we need to be aware of what exactly we're doing, and not only the transaction part. You can say UML does that. You can, if you're a software guy, UML or girl, UML is a fine instrument, but it actually is a discussion of what the software does. We've already gone away from the real world. We're not interested in only what the software does. We're interested in what's happening in the real world that the software can help us with, can remind us about, can keep us aware of, can influence our focus. So we have some way to go, but I think that it's round about the time when people are realizing this.
Well, very good. Just before we bring it to Sam, I think Sam's background is more on the commercial side of software voyage management, but exactly the same points apply to voyage management as well, don't they? And I don't know if you want to.
Absolutely, it's the same in voyage management. That you can build I'm not an expert on operations software, but you can build an application that is basically bureaucratic, tells you where in operations, it tells you when your voyage started, when you should start being paid and so on. And there's another one that will tell you what you have to worry about, or the other aspects that tell you what you have to worry about. What's the commercial implications of what you're doing, and then what are the technical implications for your voyage and your consumption and so on. So there definitely is the same concept.
Oh,
I'd agree there. And one of the funny things is that you could build what you need on this commercial side in Excel. You really could. A rules-based spreadsheet that will tell you, you have entered this, now you must do this. Right? So we could say we don't need software. We could just build it ourselves in Excel sheets. But no, that's not the point. Nobody's going to do that. Or I've seen people try to do that. In a big old miner based in Singapore, I tried to sell them some contract software, and they showed me what they had in Excel, and it far exceeded the capabilities of what I was trying to sell them. However, the integrations of the piece that I had, the UI, the ease of use was, you couldn't compare them. And that's kind of where I want to go with this, that yes, your templates, yes, your software systems, maybe at the present, depending on what you're using, are a little bit transactional. They could maybe not just give you reactions to things, but maybe predict a little bit. Cool. But what about the storytelling? What about the interface that your users are seeing? This is where we should be focusing, because then you can say, right, next, go on to this. This is what's going to happen if you do this. And I think this takes the conversation onto, is the best conduit for this storytelling AI. And there I'm going to stop for a second and see what you guys think. Because personally, I would say no. We have shipping professionals that have gut feels, that are experienced. And I don't know if we could actually go and say, hey, Bard, or whatever this called now, Gemini, what should I do? Because, Carl?
well, so Dimitri's point is about the software is built around transactions, because that's what's easiest to build in software. So a transaction can be a purchase, but also if you've done a task, it means basically a change of state in a database. So that's the status quo we got today. So we're saying now we want to storytelling, decision-making support basically needs software to be made in a completely different way to the way it's been done with planned maintenance, voyage management software. And that's where we want to get from this point to improve, isn't it? But it's I suppose step one is defining where we want to go, which is kind of what we're doing now, and but then working out how on earth we're going to get there. That's why we brought in this word modeling to mean, this work of defining in granularity what you want to do or what you want to see on a screen. So I suppose if we say from this starting point today, 2024, we've got this whole decades of trying to make software evolve from what it is now to where it actually tells a story, isn't it? I suppose that's where we're going with this conversation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I think one of those key bits is, for example, if you go to, is it still called ChatGPT? If you go in there and ask a question, it's going into a lot of data and then replying back to you basis what's in there. Systems, some of the systems we use, I try and retrieve information and it says, you're looking in the wrong place. You need to go over here. You need to look into drill down here to find the, I'm like, what? Why? Why? Because the UI is not what a simple person like myself can use.
Yeah, I was talking to Pradeep Chowla yesterday, who used to run training with Anglo-Eastern Ship Management and now does a software training company. But he's saying he's experimenting with video AI. But the fact is, it's only any good if it's got some record of what. So maybe it can index every movie. So if you say, I'm on a ship, it starts thinking you're a pirate and has a captain with a pirate hat or something, you know, but it doesn't have enough data to model if you're talking about generative AI. So it can't possibly work in shipping unless in 10 years' time it can sort of come up with something sensible with a far smaller amount of data input, which nobody's invented yet. So yeah.
I'd like to take up one of Sam's points, the story. The story is very much part of figuring out the process. There's a person that's making decisions on this spreadsheet or on this application, and that person is thinking about things, and they're thinking about what you've sort of set up in the application for them to think about. Whether they can think about it or whether they spend their day navigating right, left, and center is a core issue. That's what good interface is, where you don't preoccupy the user with navigational steps. And that part is just as much a part of the process, because the person that is actually doing the work of processing let's say, a navigation issue is somebody who has to think about navigational issues, shouldn't be thinking about which button to press or what additional information they might need that they can't see, and they have no clue why they would want to look at it. So there's a big major issue with UI, and that is what is the actual person thinking, and what do they want to be thinking about, and what don't they want to be thinking about? And certainly they don't want to be thinking about navigational steps.
Oh, we've got a few questions come in now. If we can start with that. So Joanne Walters is a legal director with a DAC Beechcroft LLP. Do you think part of the problem is ship owners being unable to map their own processes manually first to understand what workflows they need? So do ship owners not actually know what their processes are, or do they not know what they are in enough granularity? I don't know which of you would like to have a go at this.
Yeah, I'll have a go if it's okay. I think the workflow is a very popular thing. I don't know why it's suddenly become popular. It's been around software for about 30 years. But it's brought up. I mean, there was a lady on BBC the other day from PricewaterhouseCoopers or somebody saying workflow, and all our businesses workflows. I think what we can say, that's pandering to the IT people. I'm one of them. And talking about a process and turning it into a workflow. It's actually a process. People actually think and do things for goals. And a lot of the things that are in there are not possible for the shipping company to deal with. The shipping company isn't going to design a user interface for you with a good concept with a good grasp of what you're thinking about and what you need to think about and what you don't need to think about. That's a specialist job. It is a specialist job. We go back to the issue of non-conformance for navigation. Certainly, maritime people understand what navigation is and what's causing the risks, and what the knock-on effect could be. The problem is the system doesn't know. So if you've got a system that's supposed to keep you aware of what the dangers are in your business, and is not just doing transactions for you, then that system has to know what those processes are. It has to know how your machinery breaks down, has to know how your processes go well and how they don't go well in every aspect of the business. Yes, certainly people in the marine industry understand that. They're not asked the right questions. There's a big rift between the IT industry and the shipping industry, and I've tried to put myself somewhere in the middle there. And because I'm a mariner from my background, the issue is that the tools that are used by the software industry are already transactional. UML is already transactional. It's based on you knowing the transaction, you plotting it, and then you showing the flow of the work, showing the actors involved, and so on. As if suddenly you've left the real world and gone into the specialist application building world. It's fine, but you need somebody in between. Somebody has to understand what's really happening and what people are really thinking about and what navigation is really like on the bridge. And that plenty of people in the marine industry can tell you that. they're not asked the right questions usually. They're asked what you want on this UI and what you want on this form and what kind of things do you have to comply with, which is only a small parts of the process involved. So this is a long answer, I think. I'm sorry for dragging on, but the marine people do understand their processes when you ask the right one. If you the issue is, what do you interpret them correctly, and do you realize how important some of those details are? For example, that the person is preoccupied on the bridge, he's doing lots of departure checklists. That's why he's paying less attention to the waypoints and corroborating waypoints and so on. That might be obvious, and everybody might know this, but you still have to take that into consideration if you're going to have a system that understands the risks involved in navigation.
Oh, very good. Sam, you want to have a go at that question?
Yeah, Carl, remember in Hamburg, I can't remember his name, but one of the guys was talking about the alerts on the captain's
Oh, the
seating.
TMS tankers guy.
No,
Oh no, the
no.
ASCA, the alarm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was new to me, and I was like, wow, that would be the worst thing possible, that you're constantly told tuk, 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 and you cannot focus on anything. So I just wanted to bring that up. That was a learning point for me from that session. But what I'm hearing now, both Dimi, what you're saying, and from Joanne's question is, yeah, ship owners know, yeah, they do, but they're not being asked the right questions. Okay, true. I think that comes down to, say, if you're a rather large ship owner with a tanker fleet and bulkers and different types of ships, when it comes to one piece of software, maybe you're only asked about the largest ore carriers. And then you help build this piece of software with a lovely company, nice people. And then they say, you know what? Now use this on your tankers, your VLCCs. I'm like, oh, I can't. There was a mismatch in the questions asked. It was all focused on a very small part of what is happening. And we know every ship is different. Every sector is different. So as Dimi said, you have to ask the right questions, and then you probably have to ask more questions.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a very unusual position as an employee of a big company, I suppose, or perhaps it's the same for you. You have to go into your own staff and ask them what they're doing or what they need, or I guess that's...
Yeah. That's a constant need for myself and the team, is to be partnering with the business, be it in the HR system for marine HR, or if it's on the tank team or the technical teams. We need to know what their problems are. I mean, we're inherently solution makers over here, right? And if we can't do it, we have to go out to market and buy something that can fix the problems.
Yeah. Well, the other big point Dimitri was making is people always underestimate how complicated real shipping processes are. So software is basically too simplistic or only doing a small part of the real process. I guess that must be your working life as well, or Sam as well.
Didn't he?
Oh.
Well, I just want to say, I agree with you that first of all, your model of having somebody, a team inside the company that tries to understand how they use application, how they should use them, or which applications they have, is a big thing. It's often the case that companies don't have this facility. Not small companies certainly don't, and medium size hardly ever do either. So it's those people that get the FaceTime with the users. You can't bring in a vendor to have FaceTime with your users to understand what they're really doing. So it's extremely important to do that, I think.
Oh, okay. So if we go on to Irene's question, so she's from Singapore Fuels Hellas, based in Greece. So she's saying, this is very interesting to me. I wondered if you considered speaking in a forum about these issues and solutions you offer. So it's a bit of background here. So I've been talking to Dimitri about these things for 8 years now, trying to work out a way of getting people interested. So today is the first time we're actually doing a public event specifically on what we've been talking about. But the big challenge is that the subject sounds so dull unless you actually work in, like Sam does, in application development. You know, when we use words like software modeling, application management, it's a big turnoff to anybody who doesn't really see the value of this or really work specifically in it. But I mean, what we need to do to make it bigger is get more people interested. So without doing a plug, we're doing an event in Athens next week on vessel performance around software modeling. So we're not calling it software modeling, we're calling it vessel performance understanding. But it's very hard to get people interested in this. But you know, the fact that we're managing, we've got 65 people online now. So I don't know, Sam, what do you think? I mean, we talked about this in Hamburg as well. So you said in a different way that this should be a really fun job for people that people really want to do. But actually, the reality of it is that it's solving nasty little software problems all the time, you know. But if it was fun, then people would want to do it and would really get engaged with it. And
yeah, I think in this forum, if we look at what's being asked of software, if we, as we were saying in the warm-up, if we zoomed out, if we took a helicopter view and then actually came with, this is the goal. So on vessel performance, right? Go Greta Thunberg on this and say the goal is less carbon emissions. Then you're going to get a ton more people interested. You tell them that you're shipping oil anyway, and they're like, "Oh no!" But you know what I mean. You have to. We have to market it differently as well. The roles, the goals that we aspire to as companies.
okay.
And then once you finally into the roles within these companies, you have to make it fun. I know there's going to be moments where we need to take an extra Sunday from the week and do patching because, yeah, it has to be done. But then once that new patch is in place and we need to test the systems, make it fun. I don't mean, oh yeah, it could be like the startups where you got some beer and some pizzas and you sit in a room and you test. You could do that kind of fun. Or you can, I don't know, there are other ways to make it fun as well. We were talking about gamification. Maybe the test lists, maybe they are different. I haven't got the solution yet, but that's the kind of stuff we need to be thinking about. So I move from this role and into retirement. I know that the next person doing this role is going to keep it going with passion.
Yeah, I hear about gamification in learning when people have through competing against each other. You know, I suppose that can work, but I don't know if an actual voyage management or maintenance management can be turned into a game. But I don't know.
Everything could be a game. I've got kids.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. So Irene's added another point. I think we need to create interest by showing the consequences of not having these tools. But I mean, the shipping industry has tolerated some really bad software for a long time and still continues to do so. I don't think really bad software is making people think that much about a different way of doing things. Is it?
Well, yes, I agree with you. The biggest problem I see is that you go into a shipping company, and the last thing you want to talk about is software because they are inundated with software demos and stuff, and people suggesting. There's many reasons why it's confusing for people to actually think about software in a constructive way. One is too many solicitations, too many solutions that don't integrate with other solutions. So you've got something isolated. We're in a period where hype is big, like ChatGPT has a lot of hype behind it. They actually don't tell us how it works, so we can't actually fit it in. We have to try it out and think how great it is before we can figure out how to use it. All these things are trends of our times. They don't help any ship manager who's got a real problem on his hands. I was talking to one last night that has to actually run the company as a fleet manager and now project manager. That's the amount of issues involved are too many, and you've got to break the issues down. It's part of making it fun as well. Somebody's not going to have fun if they have to go into a UML diagram or object diagram or right away immediately as they start have a discussion about improving, let's say, navigational aspect of an application. It's not going to be fun. You've got to keep it at the level that people in the room can understand and that also interested in. They will be experts. That's why you brought them in, but they're experts in how things work, perhaps in the real world, and not how you're going to put them into a software package. So the delineation of the discussion so that it's, everybody understands risk management. Anybody can do this. I did this a few minutes before the conference. It's about navigations. What's the issue is that I found that this little diagram, the only thing it told me that I already knew, but it's good to have it down. It's good for the computer to know, is that the person is going to be doing other things. Can the software know that the person is going to be filling out other forms? Of course it can. So if the bloke's filling out other forms, then you have to consider, why is he filling out other forms, and should he be doing this with navigation? Now, anybody in the marine industry can talk about this, that is a deck officer. You don't have to involve them in a UML diagram, and so it's not, their involvement stays with you, and when finally you get to the UI, that part stays. They'll be interested in that because they have to work your UI. And so I think that it's a question of just putting some common sense back into who you're involving and how you're involving them.
Yeah, very good. So we go to Dimitris Fountoukidis's question. So there's a lot of little elements here I've been thinking through while you've been talking. So Dimitris is a CTO of DevMath in Greece. So he's saying proper implementation of process-orientated software is a matter of database design or software capability. So my thought is, okay, yes, you're right. But first of all, what kind of database? Is it a graph database with enormous flexibility and fluidity, or is it a entity relationship database, which is very rigid and suited to transactions? And then modeling a software capability, yes, you're right, but it's not like something we can just give to a software developer generally, because it's extremely hard to do. Hello, Sam, do you want to give any comments on that? I mean,
yeah, I'm thinking in this regard, and what Dimitris was just saying then, if you're focusing on the expertise in the maritime industry, or if you're focusing on the expertise in the software development, marrying the two, from where I've been, it's been a lot of focus on, you are a tech genius, go and learn some shipping. And it sounds like in this forum, it's a lot of, we have all these processes in place. Now we need somebody else to build them. Oh, there's a person who's used to be a maritime genius, and now they're turning into a tech genius, and they've married everything. I don't know if that's the case. Can we see that there are a divide between the two sides that still needs to be brought together properly? And the forums for that, I don't know if it's VC round fundings in Paris that's going to bring together the latest email passing system with a big VMS company. I don't know. But a good developer and a good maritime background that is on the architect level, the helicopter, because we know we can drill down later and find the expertise. That is that happening anywhere? It's actually a question back to you guys. Have you seen that happen?
well, I think Dimitri was one of the first people who did this because he had a maritime background, then became a software developer, didn't you? So.
Yeah, my experience was that I was very lucky to be involved with some people that were outstanding software developers from the point of view of understanding domain issues. So I was in the same room as, you remember Stuart, and I was in the same room with him for years. He's now at Google. That helps. It helps if the person on the technical side is actually interested in how the real world works, and that was easy for me. I learned a lot that way. So, but the gap has to be closed, and it's not. There's no sort of formula, little boxes for this. It's a matter of. It's also a matter of the use cases. Some people have expertise, some people don't. I'm not a sort of bureaucrat by nature. So if somebody gives me a form with lots of tick boxes in it, I switch off. I'm not going to critique a form with tick boxes because I don't understand the concepts well enough. Other people do, and they're very happy, and I have clients that can do that, but it's not my expertise. So I think that the the takeaway is that you have to experiment with this process. But once you see it working, I think you can then pull the skill sets together, even in your own environment. But it's useful to do that, because I see people so confused by so much sort of precision. You have to take a decision to buy this software. Well, how can I take a decision to buy this software if I don't know what it does? I don't know how it fits in with everything else. I don't know how it's actually going to be used. I don't know if my people are going to have a take up on it. But I have to spend 2 hours really focused watching this. And then another one comes along, and another one comes along. And this is taking away from the time available to think about the process, saying, what do I really want from this process? What does the system do for me? What does computerization do? And what does it leave out? And how can I fill in the gaps here? That would be good discussion. But again, I don't know what people you need in the room for this. I can't tell you off the top of my head. I can only say that I've seen it done. And it took some pretty focused people to pull all this together and be open-minded to what they forgot. Because the best developers I've ever seen always tell you that they always look down and never particularly excited about what they show you. They're not putting any hype in, and they're always thinking about what they didn't put in.
I think the bit where you're saying testing it out, getting it in front of customers, getting it in front of people like ourselves, that is where the fun is. But being too late in the process, then you're like, oh, we can't do anything about this unless you're very business rule capable software where, okay, configuration flags plus other actions that make it very, us. If it was something that is off the shelf that can be molded by somebody like ourselves, that is so much fun. And that's what I know what the team likes to do as well. So we currently have to do that with consultancies. So we'll bring in off the shelf and then sit for very expensive hours with consultants to amend the software how we need it. And I would much prefer to be at the time of development or tweaks being done, new features to be involved. And we do get that with some of our vendors at the moment. Sometimes we have to beg to be part of this. It'd be nice to be asked. And I'm sure we're not the only ones.
Yeah, I was at I do another magazine about oil and gas digital technology. So I was in a panel discussion in Florence 2 weeks ago with Baker Hughes, Chevron, and Repsol about new software they'd made for oil and gas production management. And this was, they worked together on this for 3 years. Also, AWS was involved, and the whole session was about the partnership approach, getting away from transactional. So it seems like this is what we'd like to see in shipping, I suppose, if there's a possible way it could be done, isn't it?
Well, it's very encouraging to hear from Sam that he wants to be involved in the earlier stages of the design, and I'll be very specific. When you add an attribute to a system, that it's a critical step, because then it's not easy to add it later unless you have a very flexible system and it configures very well.
And it also needs to make sense to many people, right? Because I've been on the opposing side of this, and Singapore, early 2020s, and somebody wanted orange. This is, I'm not joking, came out of a meeting and somebody said, I really like it, but can we have all the banners in orange? I was like, what is that going to do? It looks like you guys, yes, but why? Why are we going down this conversation route when that's not the kind of bespoke, not the kind of tweaks we're talking about? What we're talking about here is fundamentals, right?
Absolutely fundamentals. Absolutely fundamentals. I mean, just to go back to the navigational example is about how people go through a navigational process, what they could be bored with, what we could be preoccupied about, that's the fundamental part if you're going to actually make the system understand what navigation is. And it's not there's nothing to do with orange colors. Also, I get a lot of discussion about UI. When they don't mean UI, they mean they want controls that look fresh and new. It's like having a new paint on the ceilings. That's always very nice, but the issue is, what do those things do? What are the how do they affect the user, and how do they reduce preoccupation and so on? Does a new control reduce preoccupation? If it does, it's great. So the conversation can go into various sort of dead ends a lot of the time, but I think that the skill is to start with, are we covering what you want to cover here? And that's the part that gets left out a lot. I have a sorry to drag this on, but I have a friend and colleague who is a famous professor for requirement solicitation. And he came to the conclusion that requirement solicitation actually isn't working. It's not working. Why? Because he's always brought in, because he's a very famous guy. So he's brought in when the stakes are high for some sort of government extension of some software. And they don't have anywhere near the amount of time they need to work out how to build a software. I mean, I think I would hazard a guess that this Fujitsu situation in England is similar. They were brought in, they were given a budget, they were given a time frame, and they were given a certain amount of time to understand what people were doing and what they wanted, and it wasn't enough. I've never heard anybody in requirement. I know two people in requirement solicitation who actually teach the subject. They'll tell you that it's a broken process. You can't in 6 months work out what somebody needs and build it and guarantee that thing is going to be extensible because they are going to forget things or not be told things. That they're going to have enough time to think about the knock-on effects and the consequences. It's a very difficult thing to achieve in a space of time. So having more time to do this, having systems that are tolerant, having systems that you can change, having systems that your client can change, I think are the middle ground here.
Well, there's a question here coming from Spiros Tarasis. So he's saying, thanks for the discussion. You need to have a vast knowledge of how shipping works, but one problem is most of the important discussions in shipping take place through emails. And how do you put processes to that? I guess you need to know what the processes are. Well, is that but then you could abstract from the emails. Is that Sam, do you want to have a go at that one?
I hate email. Honestly, I think we all do. It's dead. There's too many emails. So I see the importance of communication and clear communication and tools that can provide that. Of course we do. But and I also see that many meetings, yes, they could have been an email. Yes, we all agree. But email itself and how it's used in the industry, how it's used everywhere, it's an irk of mine. I would not want to spend the next 12 minutes discussing email, unless there was something magical about email.
Spiros is vice chairman of the management committee of Intercargo. So,
well, hi, Spiro. I know Spiro, and he's a very thoughtful person. I think that the ideas in the email are what you're looking for. When you don't have ideas in the email, it's just a matter of enunciation. It's not the best way to enunciate things, and because it's the person writing the email who's calling attention to something is in his idea of what everybody should be doing, not the other person who's receiving it. So there's huge problems with email. The story, the idea capture is useful because it's quick and it happens, and then you can exchange it quickly. And ideas capture is, I think, very important. I think that whatever ideas capture you have in a business, like if you've thought of why something's going wrong on the ship, you have to persist it somewhere. You shouldn't be now. If you have a choice, you have to think, which application do I put this? I do it defects tracking, or should I put it in the scheduling, the maintenance scheduling, or should I put it in the non-conformances? That's not going to work either. You want the idea to be captured. then you need to channel that idea to the right places, to the right people, and so on. I don't think that's that much different from making applications in the enterprise. I think that if you're building an application, you should be thinking about what's going to come up here that other people need to know. How's this idea going to be transferred to that person? For example, an approval of a purchase item. It could be simple. It might not be simple. It might be very technical. How do you approve a purchase item? It's a technical purchase. Shouldn't the technical people know? Not every time, but sometimes they do. So I think the ideas capture of email is important, of any content is important, on any application use. And the way I would like to think about it is that it's part of your normal application. It shouldn't be the fact that you have an email facility that multiplies the same content by 5 every day. Every day somebody copies, maybe not five times, maybe 100 times. We got an email about lubricant deliveries, and he's taking these or lubricant samples, and he's making 100 copies of this for 100 ships. And so this kind of thing is a problem. It is a problem. It needs to be solved.
I agree. When you say the idea capture, yeah, I think I've often, before Dropbox, I would send myself files. I would send ideas in the files. Should have invented Dropbox, whatever. But when it comes to this, then the applications, an email that could become an alert. Ooh, we've already spoken about alerts. That's a bad idea, right? But an email that could actually be a task, a to-do that you have to go and do before you can do something else. Maybe that's what we should be thinking about this. If it is a task-based email that's relevant to software you're using. Right?
I agree with you entirely. I think it starts with what you're doing in the enterprise, which if you're a software provider or somebody making sure that software works in the enterprise, you're thinking about those processes. You ought to be able to tell when something is, or at least you have the topography to tell when something's needed and when an email or an idea needs to be considered, rather than spending time doing emails. I know people that run into other people in airports reading emails with a handheld device in their faces. It's a problem. It's a problem, and it deviates your attention, keeps you awake if you're falling asleep. But that's I can not think of any other positive aspect of it.
Oh, so we've got a question here from Vikram Purohit, who's with Ulysses in India. So perhaps we'll put this one to Sam. But to summarize the question, he's saying, can't we make this stuff simpler? If we have got an Alexa on the ship, so we could just ask it questions by voice. I mean, my thoughts is that this requires enormous amounts of modeling. It's probably 100 times more difficult to make something with an easy user interface than it is to make something with a complicated user interface. And we're talking about an extremely complicated process and limited budget. So we're not talking about Apple type budgets.
I don't think Alexa's gonna, or whatever they're called, mine's Hey Google, right? It's not gonna be like asking my granddad, how do I do this? Right? It's not. My granddad knows how to do it. He did it 1,000 times. It's not gonna get there. Or if it does get there, I will be long gone already.
Yeah, maybe.
So no, I think there is enough expertise on the ship. There are 25 years of sailing. Go from cadet up to being the master. You have seen everything you can do in the 25 spaces on the ship for you. So if somebody has a question, ask there. They honestly start in the right place. The software is an enabler. If they can't remember because they've also gotten old and bald, then search it up. A Google search, an easy search, yes, because then you get, search anything, you get 50 different hits, right? And you find the right one. But Alexa's not going to siphon through those and get you the right answer that you need, like you think you need. You think, oh, what's the, I can't think of an example, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, Vikram, I'd say another aspect is that Sam just said that you can ask somebody on the ship, and that's a very good way, and that's how people have got by in offices getting to know what's going on before they read emails. So they do ask people. So the person building this email system, which will be incredibly difficult to build, that is like Alexa, it doesn't have a return on investment. Somebody's going to tell you, I can ask this bloke. Why should I ask the Alexa? This bloke knows much more about what's going on the ship, knows the instances. Now, here's something about instances. Vikram, you're a IT person, so you understand instances very well. Alexa doesn't know the instances of your ship unless Alexa is taught and has got a map of everything that you do on your ship. It doesn't know what you did just now. So if it doesn't know what you did just now, it doesn't know what's entirely relevant to what you're asking. I'll say that about ChatGPT. It's a fantastic tool. I absolutely think it's great. But it doesn't know your instances. It doesn't know where you left the bag. You know, if you ask it, where are my spares? It will tell you, well, either ask the shipping company or ask the vendor. Yes, that's a good answer, but it doesn't answer my question because it's not going to know where I left my spares. There's no access to where my spares are. And when there is, at the time there is, then somebody will have taught it exactly what we do in the shipping business, exactly what we do. And when that happens, then we'll have the ability to be able to talk to it. But remember once it's something else as well. People, chat and so on is a system for correlating words. It's a brilliant system for correlating something that you're saying in a question to something that it knows somewhere else. We don't use that approach as people. We make exchange a few words, but the first thing we do when we go up to somebody is we make sure that what we want and what that person knows is matched. And that is a different architecture. It's not the same as matching words. It's a matching goals and matching goals and processes. That's what people do when they interact with each other. They don't match words with something that they read. This isn't how it works. So whereas it's a brilliant tool, I mean, I use it to read long documents, which I can't understand, or there's too many references and too many abbreviations and so on. This thing works just fine for that. And it's a brilliant tool, but it's not about knowing what's going on somewhere. Unless knowing what's going on is happening in the real world now, and the company that builds this OpenAI is putting billions of dollars training it on what's going on today, then it would know that if it was reading the general news. But the idea that it knows your part of the world is something you'll have to deal with. If you want to set it up, it can. If you tell it what you're doing in your business, it probably can be quite useful.
Oh, it's fantastic. We've got about 2 minutes left. I don't know if we want to have any closing thoughts about how we move forward. I mean, hopefully we've set up the little fire here about how software can be better. I don't know, Sam, do you want to give a minute of closing thoughts? Or?
And my closing thought is I'm thankful I come to these.
Oh, well.
Honestly, Dimi, speaking with you, I hear a lot that I didn't know. I hear the questions, the inputs. This is fantastic. I think we need to get some influencers on board and put this on Instagram so we get some young people in here, though.
Whoa. Well, on Friday, we're going to look at what modeling looks like with 2 real-life cases. So I'm looking at dry dock management with Vessel Man, and we're looking at managing livestock. So our ideas are where the shipping process has been brought into software rather than the other way around. I don't know, Dimitri, you want to have a minute for final remarks?
Yes, Sam he mentioned something about can the client help come in early and see what you're trying to build for them. I think it's extremely important. So for me, that was a very important takeaway. And the model of his model of being the person that makes sure that the stuff works in the business is extremely important. We don't get that. At best, we get somebody that puts the data in or stuffs sort of 30,000 spare parts in the system. Okay, that has to be done, but it's not. You still could put the 30,000 parts in the system, and still it might not work. So, knowing why and how, and knowing enough about what works and what doesn't is important. Very important in software design and the requirements of the station.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's the end of the webinar, and I shall pass over to Farah for the closing words. Cheers.
Thank you to our guest speakers, Dimitris Lyras of Paralos Maritime Corporation and Samuel Jones from TORM, and to all our viewers. We'll be sending you a YouTube video link soon with their contact details if you have any further questions. Join us for our next webinar on this Thursday, the 22nd, with Cobham Satcom, which you can book online at our website. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks.
bye, bye, everybody.